Okay, and just quickly to show you how you would actually get there. Can everyone see my Chrome tab? Okay, I'm going to assume everyone does. So you can click the event calendar up top, and it'll give you a list of all the events we as the DRC host, as well as sessions that are hosted by PCM and Ignite. So for example, on Wednesday at 1, there's going to be PCM support event. This gives you the Zoom link, and then near the end of September, in addition to our office hours on Friday, there'll be that Ignite event, all of us Friday morning coffee, which is the introduction to the workbench. So I encourage everyone here to go to those, especially if they can't join us at this time or on Tuesdays for a drop-in office hours. Thanks. Okay. So what we'll cover today, we'll talk just about some basics about billing in the All of Us Researcher Workbench, specifically free All of Us credits, what you actually pay for when you're using the Workbench, billing in workspaces and using Google Cloud billing accounts. Also, we'll discuss a little bit about third-party billing in the NIH STRIDES program, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, but probably if you are not familiar with setting up billing accounts like this, which I'm guessing a lot of people aren't, I would strongly encourage you to utilize our third-party billing partner. That's basically their job, and they're good at it. But I'll talk more about it a little bit later. But that's in case you don't remember anything. I would strongly encourage everyone to just contact them, and I'll show you how to do that later. We'll do some FAQs about billing, and then finally a demo where I can show you how to set up a GCP billing account using free GCP credits in case your AOU ones run out and you want to utilize those. Either way, it's useful because I'll show you how to basically link this account to your workspace. And this could be a free GCP billing account that I'll use today, or even just a billing account associated with an NIH fund of some way. So if you're curious about how to do that, I'll show that there. I'll give a really brief introduction on how to analyze costs associated with your workspace in Google Cloud, as well as setting up budget alerts. So basically, whenever you sign up for the Workbench, probably as most of you know who are signed up and are here, you get $300 in free credits to use. One nice thing is, unlike some other things, including GCP's free credits that are separate from AOUs, these don't expire. There's no time limit, so they only will expire when you actually use them for some kind of analysis, which I'll talk about in a second. Another thing is nice too is that when you actually sign up to use the Workbench, you won't actually be charged for anything you do unless you manually add a billing account. So you don't need to add a credit card or anything when you first sign up. You can just go to the website, sign up as long as you're eligible, and then start using these credits immediately. It'll automatically default to using them too, even when you have other ones available, as long as you have some left. One thing I want to mention too is that using the cohort and dataset builder tools are free, and you only get charged for analyzing, pulling, and storing data. I'll talk about that in the next slide. But basically, using all the tools that are available that are not using cloud environments or storage, you can use those for free, and you won't need any of your credits. You can make workspaces also that will not need your credits. So what actually does use those credits, as well as money you might have in a linked GCP billing account. Basically, any types of costs will be incurred by the amount of data that you're pulling, specifically data from BigQuery, the amount of time you have running an environment to do your analysis in a Jupyter notebook. And by environment, I mean basically your CPU and GPU and RAM and worker variables. And basically, probably many of you have seen this, and I'll show it maybe a little later. When you're setting up a cloud environment, basically it'll give you the cost of your environment when running as well as when paused. And it'll also tell you if you have any free credits, how much you'll be using, or how much you have left with your credits, excuse me. One thing to note too is that when you update the variables before you create an environment, this number will automatically update. So we're very transparent about the costs you'll incur from the environment, at least when you're doing an analysis. The other type of cost is storage, and so basically that's the amount of space you're using for your persistent disk and or workspace bucket. So basically, it's just some summaries here. It's about 4 cents per month per gigabyte for your workspace bucket, and then for a standard provision disk, and then for an SSD disk, it's about 17 cents per gigabyte. So basically, storage costs are generally low, but we want to make it clear that you will get incurred for those costs too if you're using them. Generally, most of your big costs are going to be from pulling data from BigQuery as well as the amount of time you have your environment running. Some suggestions I wanted to make, because we get a lot of questions about how do I optimize my cost, how do I spend less, which are very good questions. Just some suggestions here. It's hard for us to give really concrete advice for every single scenario, but these are generally good for most. The first being, you want to minimize the amount of data that you're actually pulling in, and that will help you, that'll decrease theoretically your environment costs as well as your data costs if you do that. Again, going along with this, if you minimize the amount of data that you're pulling, you'll need a smaller environment to actually analyze that data. That said, though, you don't want to have a really, really tiny one, because you'll probably make things go slower. And if you don't have enough RAM, you'll encounter kernel errors. So if you're hitting a lot of kernel errors, you probably want to increase your RAM at least and see if that helps. Another thing too is you want to work with small cohorts or data sets first to optimize your workflows. So let's say you actually want to analyze a cohort of 10,000 people. But when you're doing your optimization, you might want to start with a cohort of, say, 100 people from that larger cohort. Make sure that you have everything working correctly, and then you can go back and pull that larger data set that you actually want to work with. Another thing too is, in order to not have to pull data each time you run an analysis, if you have queries that are pulled, you might want to save them as files in your workspace bucket, which is generally a lot cheaper than the queries themselves. The next thing you might want to think about is effectively managing your environments you have. So for example, if you have an environment running, it's going to cost, the most. If you have an environment paused, it will incur a smaller cost than when it's running, but it usually still incurs a cost. So if for some reason, if you know you're not going to be using your environment for a while, I'd recommend probably just deleting it. Now you want to make sure you have any intermediate files saved to your bucket, as mentioned here, and or a PD. But basically, if you're not actually using your environment and it's kind of pricey, you might want to think about deleting it. I'll show you where this is later, but also check out this recently updated, like yesterday, suggested optimizations for cost and compute time article that we have on the support hub if you have questions about that. So the reason we do this, and we did it last year too, is because billing can be very complicated, especially for researchers that are not familiar with cloud-based tools, which I personally was not that familiar with using cloud-based tools before I got them, and I certainly wasn't familiar with paying with them. So we realized that can be a problem. We have a lot of good resources available, first of which is this office hours session. Second of which is the user support hub, which I showed you. You can go to support.researchallofus.org. We have an entire section now that's devoted just to credits and billing, because we get a lot of questions about it and it is complicated. And then finally, you can also contact us via the help desk, which you can access many of ways, but probably the main one people will be using for the workbench is by clicking the contact us button on the the main menu, and then asking a question that way. As I mentioned before, so I'll show you how to do this in the demo, but for most users that are not familiar with cloud billing, it's going to be easiest and probably most efficient and best to just click use a billing partner when you have the option to create a billing account. And that's particularly true if you have NIH funding and you might be eligible for STRIDES. So discuss this a little bit more later, but basically STRIDES are cloud discounts that are available if your work is funded by the NIH. If you utilize this third-party billing partner, they or someone who's associated with your university already, if you have one, can help you get those, take advantage of those discounts. So again, heavily suggest people utilize Carosoft, which is our third-party billing partner, if you have questions and you're not sure about doing this. Now, if you already have a billing account set up, then you can probably skip this step and work on actually making sure it gets linked to the workbench. I will say that, especially if you're not doing genomic data, you might be able to do a whole project just using your credits. However, if you are using genomic data or you're doing a large project, you'll probably need to start thinking about linking a billing account or linking a billing account after you exhaust your free credits. You should get an automatic email when you're close to your limit, which is kind of our gentle way of saying, encouraging you to start thinking about a long-term billing solution before you're out of free credits. Once your credits are exhausted, you won't be able to use your workspaces. because there's nothing actually funding their use. Now, the workspaces do not get deleted, so don't worry about that, but they basically will just remain inaccessible until the billing account is linked. Right now, the only type of billing setup you can use is Google Cloud projects or GCP billing accounts. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but if you, for example, are going to set up your own GCP billing account, either with like some kind of, funded credit card from a grant or department, or you're trying to use your free GCP credits, you have to use a non@researchallofus.org account to set up a GCP billing project. So just keep that in mind. And basically the way you'll actually, and again, I'll do this in the demo, so if you don't remember this here, it's fine. And we have recordings of this, so again, if you don't remember how to do this, there's a lot of ways to access this. But the idea is that you'll need to add the @researchallofus.org accounts of anyone you want to use the billing account, as well as Terra billing @TerraBio. So for example, and you'd add them as billing account users to whatever GCP billing account you have in the GCP console. You'd probably want to add yours as a billing account user, but you don't necessarily have to. And then you also want to add, for example, if you're collaborating with someone and you want them to be able to create workspaces using this account, you would add them. As long as you've set up your permissions correctly, you should be able to find it listed as an option in your account when you're editing your workspace. And I'll show you what that looks like when you do have it set up and you don't have it set up. One thing I want to mention, because this is not necessarily, it's not necessarily obvious and not necessarily intuitive, billing occurs at the workspace level. So whenever you create or duplicate a workspace, it will have an associated billing account with it. And that could either be free credits, which again are default, that's like the default choice if you have any left, or a GCP billing account that you've added manually or someone has added in your name. And basically what you'll do is you'll add some type of billing account as shown here when you're creating a workspace. One thing I want to note is that it can be changed anytime by clicking the edit button of your workspace. So if you need to update it for some reason because you're running low or you just want to use a different billing account, you can do that. But basically, any type of analysis that's done that incurs cost will be billed to that account. So let's say there's 5 people using one workspace, right? You're collaborating with some people. If you're the creator of that workspace, any work done by any of those 5 people will be incurred into whatever billing account you've selected. So it will not actually be the environments that other people have created and storage that other people are utilizing in that workspace will not be billed with their credits, right? So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about permissions and sharing your environments with people, and costs you might incur that way. One thing I want to mention too is that different workspaces created by the same user can have different billing accounts. So for example, if you if you have 3 workspaces and you want to be funded by an NIH grant that's sort of set up in GCP, that Carahsoft helped set up to a GCP billing account, you can do that. Then you can also have a different workspace that's using credits. So just something else to consider too when you're when you're creating a workspace or editing one. Workspace creators have unique privileges, mainly with respect to billing, but also some other things. So as a workspace creator, you can easily share with other people, right? And again, I mentioned this too, that the creator is billed for any work that occurs in the workspace, either that's running an environment, storage, or anything else that might incur cost. So i.e. pulling data. And that applies to both AOU credits and billing accounts. And so one thing I want to mention too is if you want someone to be able to access your notebooks in your workspace, but you don't want them to actually be able to do any kind of analysis, what I would do is recommend adding them as a reader. So what they could do is they can actually view your notebooks, but they can't create environments, or basically they can't do anything that would incur a cost in that workspace. In order for them to actually do something like that, they would have to duplicate it themselves, making them the new creator of this duplicated workspace, right? With whatever billing account they want to use. So that's a recommendation we generally give for people if you're not sure about, you want to add someone who who may or may not be spending money that you have or credits you have. Only the workspace creators can change your billing account. So let's say I'm created a workspace with my free credits. and I give owner access to one of my collaborators. Even owners can't actually update that billing account. Again, they would have to duplicate the workspace in order to change it in some way, because that would be the duplicated version and not the original. Another thing too is that because of that, only the creators of the workspace can actually view billing information. We're going to try to maybe think about changing that potentially, but for right now, in order to actually view any billing information, which I'll show you how to do it during the demo, you have to be the workspace creator. One thing I want to point out, which is really convenient, is that GCP offers free credits for new users that can be linked to your All of Us account. And I'll show you how to set this up in case you are running low. That said, I do want to point out some caveats. You only get $300, and they only last up to 90 days. So, if you have signed up for these free credits, after 90 days, even if you haven't used them, they'll expire automatically. So unlike the AOU ones, the GCP ones do have an expiration date. Another thing, these are separate from AOU credits. So you would have to actually go in and set this up yourself. When you're using your AOU credits, these can still be a consideration you might want to utilize while you're setting up a long-term billing solution. Since that they only do last 90 days, we generally sort of recommend them as a bridge, funding while you're getting a permanent solution set up. So, because one thing I want to point out too is that even when you're using Carahsoft, getting a long-term billing solution set up can take a while, depending on your institute and its rules. So even if you're using these free credits, I would still recommend looking into a long-term billing solution at the same time, even at the beginning when you first set that up, because it still might take you a while, or most of that time, to get an NIH associated GCP billing account set up with Carahsoft. You need to actually link a credit card to activate them, but you won't actually get charged unless you enable that. So that's one thing to think about if you want to use these. Unlike AU credits, they have to be linked to your workspace account in Workspaces. Again, I'll show you how to do that. But these are a nice sort of option that you can utilize after your All of Us credits have expired. One more note I didn't write here is that these do have, you can't use really powerful environments when you're using these. So if you're using these and you encounter environment errors, it's probably because your CPUs and/or RAM amount is too high. So they do have some computational limits that are not there for actual GCP billing accounts or free credits, which you can, for either of those, you can basically have as large of environments as you want, as long as they're functional. So just keep that in mind too. So again, what is a third-party billing partner and what do they do? Basically, they can assist you through setting up a billing account in GCP. And basically they'll work with you, your institute and admin officers, as well as GCP and GCP STRIDES to make sure that you have an account set up, and also that you can be eligible for any STRIDES discount you can take advantage of. And generally they'll set up a virtual meeting, though that may depend on what you're doing. Our third-party billing partner is called Carahsoft, and I'll show you how to access this panel. You can do this in the Workbench, but you can also feel free to contact our help desk at support@researchallofus.org if you have questions about how to approach them. It's easiest to do it through the Workbench. It will send them an automatic email that gets generated, and they respond usually within 1 to 2 business days. But if you, for some reason, are having difficulties finding that, we can direct you there or forward you their email address. Like I said, it can take a bit of time depending on your exact situation, but they will contact you quickly. One thing I want to mention too is that this isn't frequent, but maybe more likely in the future. Some institutions, there are different third-party billing partners you can use, or that institutes can use to set up billing accounts through STRIDES. I think there's 2 others. Your institute may have already signed an agreement with them, and if that's the case, even if you contact Carahsoft, they will actually find whoever contact is appropriate at that place and connect you with them. So even if they can't help you because of an agreement your institution has signed with a different third-party billing partner, contacting Carahsoft will allow you to quickly get in touch with them too. So just keep that in mind. And what is STRIDES? So STRIDES is an NIH program that provides discount for cloud computing costs. And there's different types of discounts depending on what you're doing, but they're generally pretty significant, and can even be up to 25% in some cases, but they're usually at least 10 to 15. So that's, it's not like a small 1 to 2% discount. It's pretty substantial. And basically, it's for all cloud work that's funded by the NIH. and that can be based at your institute or lab level, depending on the time and effort for your institute. And again, the third-party billing partners, whether or not it's Carahsoft or one your institution is signed with, they will actually work with GCP STRIDES to help you find discounts you're eligible for. And if you're curious about learning more about STRIDES, if you don't know about it, you can visit cloud.nih.gov, which will have more information and frequently asked questions about STRIDES and the STRIDES program. Okay, so just to summarize before I get into the FAQs/demo portion of today. Billing expenses are incurred when you're pulling, analyzing, and storing data, but not when you're using the cohort dataset builder tools. If you don't have a good understanding of GCP billing accounts, it's generally best to contact a third-party billing partner, i.e. Carahsoft, for help. And they'll help you take advantage of any STRIDES discounts you might be eligible for. GCP credits can be used in addition to all of us credits. And that billing and any kind of costs are incurred at a workspace level, so not at the user level. And then finally, I'll go over this too in the demo. You can get a lot more support about billing on the user support and help desk, and I'll show you how to utilize those two resources. Question we get a lot is, how much will my project cost? Which again is a very reasonable question. I will caveat this and say that it's very hard for us to give an answer to that because it depends so much on what you're doing. And there's so many different types of things you can do with this data that it makes it difficult to answer that. That said, we do have some example featured workspaces with the costs associated with them on our website, on our support hub. Basically, if you just literally search how much will my project cost, this article will probably be the first one that comes up. It's in our credits and billing section. It basically lists the cost to run, for example, an LDL cholesterol GOS, which it's actually smaller. This was updated. Sorry, I didn't update the slide yet. It's more like around $20 to $25. If you want to go through the wearables in human phenome demo project, it costs about $25 to run your analysis. It'll tell you the compute size that's used for the environment that you're running. So these will give you decent estimates for some types of analyses, but again, it's very hard for us to actually reasonably answer the question, how much will this specific project cost? So again, try to utilize the steps I mentioned to minimize your costs. Pull in less data than you can, or you need to minimize your environment size, and then also use small data sets when you're working out workflows. Another question is, can I set a spending limit to my project? And basically, not specifically, but you can set up spending alerts in your GCP billing account. And basically, unfortunately, that's just something related to GCP billing that we have no control over. And that's like everyone, because it'd be really nice to have a specific, be able to say, I only want to spend $1,000 on this project. But the way GCP is set up, that's not possible. But again, there are spending alerts you can use, so at least you get an update of when you hit some milestones that you might be interested in, and you can then manually, stop paying for something at that point. Another question we get occasionally is, can users pool their initial credits? And that's, the answer is no to that. And basically, you can only use them on your own accounts. One thing you could do is, let's say, I'm working with a collaborator, one other person, on a workspace, and I've exhausted my credits on that workspace, right? What your collaborator could do then is duplicate that workspace, add me back as a writer or owner or reader, depending on what they want to do, and then use those free credits in that new workspace, right? But we would not be able to add the other person's credits in the original one. So just keep that in mind. I think that's it as far as frequently asked questions. So I'm going to start a demo. So first, I'm going to go to the research, the workbench. And it looks like my colleagues have been answering most of the questions, if not all of them, in the chat. If for some reason they haven't at the end and they're related to billing or anything else, we'll answer them. So but it seems like most of them have been addressed. Okay, so one thing I want to point your attention to is go to workspaces, right? Just to give you an idea of what it looks like when you're actually starting an environment and how your costs can change depending on depending on the environment settings you select. Start environment and using this panel, and you can see here with this specific cloud analysis environment, 2 CPUs, 7.5 gigabytes of RAM, and a data prod cluster. It's going to cost me 61 cents per hour, and when running, and 2 cents per hour when paused. So in this case, it might not be a big problem when I pause it because that's pretty low. But if it's for say like 20 cents per hour, I might want to just leave my environment when I'm done. It'll also again tell you the costs you're drawing from. In this case, $302 of free credits. But if I wanted to say increase the CPU number to 32, maybe the RAM to like 208, you can see my cost automatically updates, and it's much higher because obviously the amount of compute I'm using is bigger. Same thing if I increase the number of workers, right? If you're just using a general analysis environment, again, you'll see costs updated. You have to use a PE when you're utilizing a standard environment, so that cost per month comes there. And basically, that's sort of how you get an idea of how much your environment will cost per hour. And again, the main types of costs you're generally incurring are related to environment cost per hour, as well as data you're pulling when you're actually doing analysis of your number. Okay, so how do I actually set up, or how do I link a billing account in the Workbench to a workspace? In this case that I already have, although it could be one that I'm creating. So I will go back to workspaces and I'll click create. Just as a, you'll add a workspace name. I'm not going to do that right now. But the main thing I want to point out here is that you'll select the current billing account. And like I said, because I have 300 in credits, 302 specifically, I can select those, right? But if I want to link a billing account, I can do so here, and I'll show you kind of what that looks like. So I'll click this. You want to say allow. And what you'll see is that some will come up, but they're all grayed out. And that's because I don't have any functional ones that are linked to this account anymore. There are some demo ones that I've set up using free credits that are expired. And so if you have any expired ones, that's what they'll look like, in case you're wondering. But I'm going to set up one using GCP free credits now that should show up in black that I could select to create a workspace. If you wanted to contact Carahsoft, how would you do so? The way you do so is when you are creating a workspace or duplicating one, you click create a billing account. You can click use a billing partner, fill out your information, and then basically, like I said, it will generate an automatic email to them. They should respond to it within a day or two. If for some reason they haven't, just contact your help desk. How do you contact the help desk in case you have questions? Easiest way is to go to main menu, click contact us, and then this little widget will pop up at the right-hand corner. Again, how do you access information to learn how to set up billing accounts? You can go to User Support Hub. There's a lot of useful information on there, like I mentioned, the event calendar. But also we have an entire section devoted to credits and billing. So for example, if you wanted to figure out suggested optimizations, you can click that article, right? There's also an entire how-to about how to set up using initial credits, using free GCP credits, common solutions that we found that people have with billing accounts. There's a really good article now we have that we generally recommend people try looking through themselves before we get our development team involved. Frequently asked questions, videos. So again, basically a demo that I'll be talking about today in a very similar presentation that I gave last year is all available here. And we'll put this new one up too in this spot in case I said anything that's a little bit different than last time. But yeah, I'd encourage everyone to check that out while they're setting up billing accounts if they have questions. Again, the suggested optimizations article is really good, and this also has most of the information about that you will need to. Well, actually, all the information we just set up a billing account effectively, and I'll talk about all this today. So I want to actually set up use these free GCP credits I mentioned, right? And link it to the Workbench because, like I said, all the ones that I have linked are no longer active. How do I do that? Let's see. So what you can do is you want to go to the GCP's Cloud Console. So if you just search GCP Cloud Console, it should come up. I have an account that I made. It's not an @researchallofus.org account. It's called chrislord.aou demo 2. If I click this, you should see a button that says Start Free in the upper right corner. And basically, you can fill this out, and then, like I said, you'll have to add a credit card. Now, it will, as I mentioned, it will not, and I've tested this several times, and I haven't been charged. You have to add the credit card, but it won't actually start charging your credit card unless you actually go into the console and click Use My Credit Card. So basically, what would happen is if you have a credit card link and you run out of credits, it'll just the free credits will just stop working and the account won't be active anymore. But in order to not show you my credit card information, I'm going to pick a different one where I have this set up. I basically just I'm skipping this step, but it's very easy to do this. This takes like about a minute once you have a credit card available. Use a different account where it's already set up, and so I'll go back to the console. And I should have credits available there. Yeah, so now you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner, I don't have that option because I've already set them up. Should have, okay, I've already set them up, good. Just want to make sure that was actually correct. And once you set it up, it'll look sort of like this. You can see I have $300 in credits available and 91 days remaining because I just set it up this morning. You'll want to go to project, go to the main menu and click billing, and this is where whether or not you or a designee has the ability to add these permissions to any kind of billing account, whether it's free GCP credits, which I'm using now, or an actual like GCP billing account set up by Carousel or some other NIH partner. Third-party billing partner. You would have to do so through the Cloud Console, and that could be, maybe you're doing this, or maybe an administrator's doing this. But either way, this is where you'll actually change the permissions for the billing account to allow it to be found in the Workbench. So what you can do is okay, so you want to go to Billing Account Manage, and this is how you set up budget alerts, which I'll show you in a second. You click Manage. You'll see that I'm a billing account administrator because I created this account. And what I want to do is add principals. And so I want to add Terra Billing at Terra.bio, and I want to add them as a billing account user. And then I'll hit Save. So now you can see that Terra Billing at firecloud.org, which will show up if you use at Terra.bio. It's the same thing, so don't worry. It's now listed as an account user. So basically that is sort of a generic email that allows Terra to actually find this account in GCP. That's all it is. People have asked us if that gives them permission to do anything else with their profile or anything else. No, it doesn't. This is all it does. But you do need to add it. And the next, what I'll do is I'm going to add my @researchallofus.org account. It's Christopher.lord@researchallofus.org, again as a billing account user. And that will allow my @researchallofus.org profile to actually utilize this billing account. So one thing I would highly recommend doing too, because this can be confusing, is it's called My First Project, or sometimes My First Billing Account, or My Billing Account. If you want to actually make, I'd recommend changing the name. So I'm going to call it Billing Demo. So that way you're actually going into the Workbench panel and looking for it. It's easy to find. And sometimes people confuse the My First Project or My Credits with AOU credits that they've expired. So they're like, why do I have that? I just recommend changing it to something that you can easily find, but that's not something you have to do. Okay, now that we've set these up, I'm going to go back here, refresh the page, create a new workspace. And now, assuming I did everything correctly, that should show up as an option. So again, I have AOU credits that, again, default because I have them. Okay, it's not showing up, which isn't ideal. Oh, it does. Okay, so again, see, I just did it myself, right? I confused myself. It is there. So now all these are still grayed out, and then billing demo, which I just set up here, is now an option, right? So then I can pick it as long as it's black, that means it's functional, and I could go on to create a workspace if I wanted to. Now I'm not going to do that just to save time, but it's there, and that's basically, you know, a really quick demo of how to link the accounts. Now I think as I've done it a few times, it's easy for me to do. But that said, it should work as long as you set these up correctly, and generally it doesn't take that long to get these permissions set up. Another wrinkle that can happen is a lot of times if it's an account set up by Carasoft or someone else, your institute might have rules about who can be an admin, so you might have to have someone else do this for you. That can take longer, obviously, but the actual working in the console to get this set up is actually pretty quick. Now that I've done that, I want to show you how to view. I'm not going to go into detail about what the categories are because, quite frankly, I'm not an expert about that, but about how to actually view costs associated with your workspace. Now, again, you have to be a workspace billing creator to do this. So if you're just an owner, you'll get an error when you see this, or you'll get some kind of permissions denied issue. But the way you can do this is you go to the About section, and you'll see a section here on the side called Billing. One nice thing is it'll tell you, if you're using credits, it'll tell you the amount you used for the workspace and any other collaborators have, over its lifetime. But if you want to actually get a detailed billing report, you can click this. I think I haven't used this workspace in a while, so probably it's going to be, so basically like my costs are probably less than a penny a day for probably some random file I have saved there. But let's zoom out to the past year, in which case it'll probably be used more, right? So okay, so you can see from February to April, I use this workspace more heavily, right? It gives me all the costs associated with the environments that day, right? So storage, PD capacity, the actual cost of my environments here, licensing fee to Google Cloud for using a Dataproc environment, things like that is all listed here. So if you have questions about what you're actually spending your money on, I'd encourage you to go here first. And this is probably the best place to find that. Finally, setting up budget alerts. I'll show you how to do that here. You can go back. This is my GCP billing account that I have admin rights to. I can go to budgets and alert here, click create a budget. And let's say, let's call it demo. Apparently this will be a monthly time range, but you can change it for all the projects I've associated with it. Let's say I just want to only spend $1,000 a month, right? So I can click 1,000. Click next, and then basically whenever I'm at, you can change these again, very customizable. I'll get an alert in my email associated with this, where I'm getting an alert for half my budget being used, 90% or all, right? And you can change the triggers, but basically, again, due to GCP's billing rules, you can't unfortunately set up an actual limit. But this is probably the next best way to give you information on how what you're spending and how quickly you're spending it if you're an admin for a billing account. Anyway, so that's how you do that quickly too, because we have a little bit of time. Just going to go to the support hub. Oh, actually, I think I showed that already. So yeah, I showed you guys the support hub. Again, we have a good billing section there. If you have questions, you can always contact us by submitting a request if you have further questions. Other than that, I think I'm pretty much done with the demonstration and presentation. So if anyone has any questions that haven't been answered about billing, first let's try to get those. And then if you have more general questions about the workbench or the program, we're happy to answer them too after. So let me see if.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah, Sam.
All the questions except for the very last one.
Okay.
The question is if you can add a division admin's email directly in the GCP billing admin section, even if they're not a Researcher Workbench user.
Yeah, I mean, if you are an admin of a, yes, basically the answer is yes, as long as you're an admin of that billing account. If if you're an admin in a billing account, you can basically do whatever you want as far as adding permissions go. So, for example, it does not have to be, only Research Workbench accounts. You can add anyone, because this is basically, this GCP billing account is not directly related to AOU. It's just it can be used for AOU work. It can be used for other cloud work too. But you would do that by let's see, account management here. Again, what you'd probably do in that case is you'd add a principal using their email, and then you'd select them. You probably want them to be maybe, some kind of admin, right? Or billing admin. So, for example, billing account admin, you could add them as that, or any type of permission that's available, right? But these are just the main ones that they have here. So yes, you could do that, absolutely. It's a good question, though. Let me really quickly too. I thank you, Sam, for mentioning that all the questions have been answered. I'll just quickly go back and see if there's anything else I want to add to any of the ones there, and if not, we can open it up to like general questions too that are not necessarily billing related. Okay, so new one. Okay. Yeah, and basically, maybe you already have STRIDES funding, which is great. And you already have a GCP billing account, in which case you don't need to go through the billing partner. But if you don't, I just recommend doing it because, like I said, that's their job. And also too, one thing I want to mention too, it doesn't actually cost anything to reach out to them. So even if for some reason you think it's like this isn't going to work for some reason, I doubt that'll be the case. There's no harm in reaching out to them. It's all free until and all their services are free. They're just actually the ones setting up the billing account for you. So I didn't mention that, but I want to throw that in there. Okay, how do I see all the workbenches? And probably that means workspaces, which I'll get to in a little bit later if we have if there's no other questions here. Yeah, so basically the GCP account here and the AOU account, they have to be different because, in case people are wondering why that is, the @researchallofus.org domain is like registered to work with basically in G Suite, but it only has permissions to do certain things. One of which is not setting up billing accounts. You also will not have an email associated with that domain. In case people are wondering if they have email access to it, they won't, and that's why. And someone was asking about, the individual researchers are not usually people who handle money, which is absolutely true. And the institution might be directly involved in billing setup. It really depends on your institution's rules. That said, though, like probably if you are looking for money faster and getting it faster, generally I've found as someone who was in academia, it's generally best to not go through admins that you don't have to. So if you don't need to work with an administration or some kind of administrator to do so, it's probably gonna be faster if you can do it yourself with Carousel or some other way. Yeah, and also, Haikwan, about that error, it probably is related to your billing account, but if you're still getting it, just send us a support ticket and we'll help you. Yeah, and so yes, instead of a credit card, yeah, you can link, it can be some kind of funding through the NIH, basically that'll be converted into some kind of, GCP account. Though credit card is, and actually I think ultimately it is a credit card that like Carosoft has. So basically Carosoft will get charged first and then they'll, back charge you or whatever grant you're using. It's all fundamentally. I think all the other questions are pretty much really well handled. So thanks, Sam, Gage, Henry, Cassie, and everyone else there who's helping. Yeah. Let's see. Someone said, I received an automatic response. They're eligible or already enrolled. Says that you don't have a free trial. It's possible you've already used one then, or for some reason, maybe it's also possible if it's like not a Gmail account, like if it's associated with the university, you might have permissions to do that. But if you just make a normal regular Gmail account, that's what I did. Like you should have the option. But if you already used them first, then you can't. Then you won't get that option again. So that could be two reasons why you might not be seeing that option.